Hey, what's up, guys? It's Saturday again, and I have another language story for you guys. Now, today we're going to talk about the language and the dialect of my home state. Most of you know that I'm from Wisconsin, and today we're going to talk specifically about this word, bubbler, which has become one of the most bizarre cultural and linguistic phenomena of my state. Now, before we get to the story, I just want to recommend to you that if you're interested in languages and language learning and linguistics and you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, I would encourage you to do so because I release 2 new videos a week about languages, and I try to make language learning fast and fun and easy. So you're not going to want to miss out on that. Now, this story itself about the bubbler is pretty short, but it does have some really interesting things to say about the way that languages work, specifically dialects. And it goes like this. I grew up in Wisconsin, okay? I was born and raised here. I've basically lived here my whole life, except for a few years that I was in the military and a little bit more than a year that I spent living in Central America. Okay, so I'm very Wisconsin-y. And this story starts when I was 19 years old and I was in church one morning. And church was over. I was walking around, socializing, hanging out, talking to people, as you do after church. And I bumped into one of the pastors of this church who was from a different part of the state. So he was from Wisconsin, just a different city. And I don't remember what we were talking about. We were talking about something or someone. I don't remember. But the one thing I do remember is he pointed to a person on the opposite end of the foyer and he said, "She's standing over there by the bubbler." And I looked at him and I said, "By the what?" He goes, "Over there, by the bubbler." And I could see the woman he was talking about, but I had no idea what a bubbler was because I had never heard this word in my entire life. Apparently, bubbler is Wisconsinese for drinking fountain or water fountain. And this word is used almost exclusively in Wisconsin and only in some parts of the state. Okay, now it's important to note that I grew up in Wisconsin and I spent the first 19 years of my life without ever having heard this word. So it shows the sharp geographical boundaries that our local dialects can sometimes have. In fact, linguists have spent a lot of time and done a lot of research on this exact phenomenon. And they can accurately predict where you're from just based off of the words that you use. In fact, there are some really cool online quizzes and surveys that you can do that I'll link to below that kind of have to do with this phenomenon. Anyways, let's take a look at this map. You see that in the United States specifically, the South and the Southeast are deep red, meaning that people in those areas use the word water fountain. Now, you can see that some northern states, specifically Michigan, and some eastern states use the word drinking fountain when they're referring to the same thing. And there's some overlap, a few mixed areas that are sort of purplish on the border there. And then you see the state of Wisconsin, my state. And you see that some portions of Wisconsin are deep green. All right, now I live in the white area where sometimes we use drinking fountain, sometimes we use water fountain, but we never use the word bubbler. But I don't live very far from the deep green city of Milwaukee, where they only use the word bubbler. And in fact, I go to school in Milwaukee, so it's just a short commute to get from where I live to Milwaukee. And that shows how sharp these geographic boundaries are. And it's crazy to me that I grew up in a city where this word bubbler is never used. But people in Milwaukee, just a short drive away, get ridiculously defensive about their bubblers. Okay, if you're in conversation with someone from Milwaukee and you use the word drinking fountain, they will debate you about what this word should be called. I saw one time at my school, at my university, someone posted a sign above the drinking fountains and it said, "Drinking fountains out of order." It must have been someone from out of town that made this sign because someone who was from Milwaukee walked up to the sign and used a Sharpie to cross out the word drinking fountain and they wrote bubbler instead. And don't you dare call it a water fountain in Milwaukee because if you do that, People from Milwaukee will stomp their feet and they'll shout at you and they'll say, it's not a water fountain. A water fountain is the thing that shoots water up into the air in the park and the water comes back down into the pool outside. A bubbler is this thing that you drink out of. And they will get so defensive over this word. It's just ridiculous. Now, what does this have to do with language learning? Well, a lot, actually. Dialects and dialectology and regional variations of languages are really important for learning that language. You need to be aware and you need to do due diligence and research on the regional dialects of the places that you're either living or the places that you're traveling to. If you're learning English in Wisconsin, you're probably going to hear the word bubbler all the time, depending on what city you live in. But then, if you drive half an hour south to Illinois, you're going to have to know that people in Illinois don't know what a bubbler is because they don't use this word. Okay, I remember one time when I was in Ecuador, and the Spanish word for bag is bolsa, which I was just referring to my backpack as a bolsa. And I said, voy a guardar mis cosas en mi bolsa. I'm going to put my stuff in my bag. Okay, little did I know that in Ecuador, bolsa is a very specific type of bag. It means ball sack. So I was communicating something very different from what I wanted to tell them. Now, these regional dialects became very relevant to my life again this past January when I was studying abroad in Mexico. Now, I was taking an atmospheric sciences class, and I was basically the only person in my class that spoke Spanish, meaning that every time we went out to eat, to a restaurant or somewhere, basically all of my monolingual classmates were swarming me and bombarding me, trying to get me to translate the menu for them. Which is fine, because I'm willing to help, but the problem is that I learned Spanish mainly in El Salvador and in Spain. And I've only been to Mexico one other time before going on this trip. So every time we went to a new city, I was encountering new words on these menus for the local words for these Mexican dishes, and I had no idea what they meant. So I would look at these menus, not understand them, and then I would just have to confess to my classmates that I didn't know what it said. And then they would look at me with these faces as if I had been lying to them this whole time, and they would say, but I thought you spoke Spanish. And I would have to say, yeah, I do. I'm fluent in Spanish, but I don't understand what it's saying. And it has nothing to do with a lack of ability in the language. It has everything to do with the specific words that are used in these regions. You just simply can't be expected to know every regional variety of a language in the language that you're learning. Chances are that you didn't know what bubbler meant before watching this video, even if you're a native speaker of English. So all this just goes to show that it's really important to put in the time and the effort to learn the regional varieties of the language that you're learning, especially if you're going to be living in or visiting a region or a place that has some really strong dialectal variations. So that's my story for this week. If you have an interesting story about languages or about language learning that you would like to share, let me know. Contact me about it, and then you could be featured on one of these videos. So thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys on Monday.